Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me again. We are here to find my winning book of 2021. A couple of people have asked me when I will be releasing my best reads of 2021 video. I did say, well, I don't know. I tend to not make them because I'm really bad at determining what my best read was. Because I'm usually very biased about the books that I've very recently read. And the sheer volume of having read 200 books overwhelms me to find favorites. Then I stumbled across a channel that did this bucket kind of pitting books against each other game to determine the favorite of 2021, and I loved that. I loved watching it, and I thought, this I can do. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through what I read each month, and then we're going to determine a winner book for each single month, and then we're going to pit them against each other. We're going to do this chart 3 times, then we end up with the 3 winners of 2021, of which I then will determine my favorite one. Obviously there's a flaw to this and it's not a perfect way. It's not like the most scientific way to determine the best read, because obviously I could read 5 amazing books in April that would all be better than the books that I pick as a winner for January and February. But I think that at the end we're still gonna get the same book. It's just a method that's fun. Yeah, and I'm thinking about doing the same thing for my worst book too, so let me know if you want to watch that. I have my Goodreads in front of me. I've been keeping very good track of all my books. Let me start screen recording as well. All right, this might take a while, so go grab yourself your favorite bevy. I got some white tea that's called a cupcake tea. All right, let us start with January. Best books in January. I read The Eye of the World in January. That was a 5-star. What else? Did I have any other 5 stars or 4 stars that were really good? I also read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Loved it. Loved it. It really is one of those rare books where I cried at the end. I read Death Note, which was a 5-star, but it doesn't even compare to the 5 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And then Words of Radiance. I read that in January too. Oh my gosh, I read Eye of the World and Words of Radiance in 1 month. What did I do? Top 3 of January are Words of Radiance, The Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and Eye of the World. This is already really tough. Oh my god, I'm already struggling. I think that potentially Words of Radiance has been my favorite out of the Stormlight Archive, and I'm in love with the Stormlight Archive. I also really did enjoy The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I cried, which is rare, but it's The Eye of the World. I think by now I read it 3 times. The first time was more of a 4-star experience, but then I started to understand so many underlying layers and inspiration and so many levels. I was getting so deep into this book. I never got as deep into any other book. I think it's my most annotated book of all time. Eye of the World is definitely the winner. All right, February. So Kakegurui, that was a great manga. I love that a lot. Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell, probably my first short story that I really adored. Very amazingly character building in this one was amazing. I loved it so much. I also really loved The Living is Easy. The Living is Easy is probably quite controversial, but was one of my favorite books in February, definitely. It is following a narcissistic woman who is a mother and who is following, in a way, it feels like this woman in her mind does the things for the good of the family, but in reality she is doing, like, she's putting them through so much damage. And I just love that viewpoint. A lot of people in the book club that I read this with didn't like it at all because the main character was so unlikable, but that's what really hit it home for me. I also read Me and White Supremacy. Loved it. Oh my gosh, and The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. Oh, this is already getting so hard again. And Wild Seed, and The Girl at the Back of the Bus. Oh my gosh. Those were all amazing books. All amazing books. I really did enjoy An Absolutely Remarkable Thing as well. But okay, so The Girl at the Back of the Bus is highly underrated. I feel like it isn't talked about enough. It's a beautiful historical fiction about a girl who is fighting for her rights. Wild Seed is genius. So putting The Girl at the Back of the Bus against Wild Seed would win. And then if we put Wild Seed against The Long Way from a Small and Angry Planet, ooh, that's tough. They have both very different qualities. The Long Way from a Small and Angry Planet is definitely one of my favorite series. But I think that the first one is not my favorite. I think it's the third, potentially. I really did enjoy it though. I did enjoy it a lot. But Wild Seed was better. And then The Living is Easy. So good if you love like questionable main characters. Mwah. I'm struggling between Becky Chambers and Octavia Butler. I do have to say that I enjoyed Dawn much more than Wild Seed. Wild Seed was great, but I think that overall the later parts of that series make it genius. But it's very similar with Becky Chambers as well. But I was much more speechless with A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. So let's go for that one. All right, let's move on to March. Okay, so we did read A Close and Common Orbit, which I really enjoyed too. This is probably going to be a common theme of me saying, oh, I really enjoyed that. Ooh, I read a lot of crap in March. I read Red Sister, which I was very positively surprised. Mind of My Mind. Ooh, that's going to be a good question. Is Mind of My Mind better than Close and Common Orbit? And I read The Yellow Wife. Okay, we don't even need to go any further. Yellow Wife is gonna take this. I don't have a rating for The Golden Sheep. Why not? It's interesting. And I read The Dragon Republic. Ooh, The Yellow Wife definitely takes this for me. The Yellow Wife is this historical fiction that is based on well, it's not based on a true story, but it is inspired by a true circumstances and a real person. And I just felt like this the story of slavery in the US and what it was like to live as a woman of color, and specifically a woman who has a Black mother and the father is an owner, and being sent to the probably hellishest prison around. And I don't know, what really grabbed me was that this was very obviously written by a person of color, and there were a few themes that were mentioned, what was weaponized and used against people of color that I had not seen in other literature. So I think it's an amazing book. Yellow Wife, historical fiction, abso-freaking-lutely. I love that we have a fantasy, a sci-fi, and a historical fiction representing my reading taste quite well. All right, let's move on to April. What have we read in April that I really did enjoy? The Murderbot Diaries, Artificial Condition, Rogue Protocol. Oh my gosh, I could not decide between them. And one thing that I have to say with Murderbot, I'm not sure that I remember which was which. That is a problem. Record of the Spaceborne Few, potentially my favorite in the series. Also Kim Jong, born 1982, amazing book. And that is it. So Kim Jong, 1982, wow. That one I really had to think about after a little bit. Though I was speechless after this one. And then Record of a Spaceborne Few, definitely one of my favorites in that series. But I think I was really, truly, absolutely, freaking-lutely hyped with the fourth one. And the Murderbot Diaries. Oh, okay. The Murderbot Diaries versus Kim Jong. I think we're gonna give this to Kim Ji-young, 1982. This is such an important book. 1982. All right, we have our first four. Oh my gosh, now it is the battle of the books. Eye of the World versus The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. So I love Eye of the World. obviously, I already mentioned that I'm going so many layers deep. Putting it against The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, it's not fair, because I think that there's a lot of genius in this book as well, but it doesn't have as many layers. But then it doesn't have the problems that Eye of the World has. Yes, Eye of the World has problems in terms of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is much more original. I think that The Wheel of Time becomes original later in the series, but not in the very beginning. And this just hits home from the very beginning. Both are genius in their own way. What does my feeling say? My feeling says I don't want them to compete. I want to say that we're going to have to go with The Eye of the World because it has so many layers that I adore. But then The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet does have some layers too that I adore. It's so much social criticism. There's so much eye-opening happening. The biggest problem that The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet has is the lack of storyline and the pacing. And that I don't feel like is a problem for me in The Eye of the World. So The Eye of the World does. Okay, and then Yellow Wife versus Kim Ji-young, born 1982. Both very important books, both a very different cultural background, both left me speechless and left me having to think about them. I had a book hangover after both of those, but I do think that Yellow Wife made a much more lasting impression on me and I was much more moved. So it is Yellow Wife. Now, Eye of the World versus Yellow Wife. This could potentially already be my two favorite of the year. Okay, I think I have to give it to Yellow Wife. And the simple reasoning is that the amount of emotions Yellow Wife was able to draw from me and make me react to when reading it first. Eye of the World was a reread and I only started to understand all the layers in the rereads and all the emotions. The emotions aren't even close to the level of the Yellow Wife. So Yellow Wife makes the race. So we have our first finalist. There we go. Here is our first finalist. The Yellow Wife by Setika Johnson. Let's go into May. We're starting with They Called Us Enemy, which, oh my gosh, moved me. And I think this was the most emotional that I've ever gotten with a graphic novel. The Galaxy and the Ground Within, definitely my favorite out of the Wayfarer series, I think. The Weight of Our Sky also was definitely one of my favorites. It was very surprising. Middle grade that plays in Malaysia during, is it a war or unrests? But battling mental health and it just was a very intimate story in a way, and it was fast-paced, it was middle grade, and I loved it because it had everything that I enjoy from a historical fiction, teaching me a little bit about history by being close to a person who lives through something. The Murderbot Diaries definitely is one of my favorite series as well. I'm surprised that I only gave those two 4 out of 5 stars. Once Upon an Eid, one of my favorite this year, definitely as well. I loved these short stories, middle grade short stories about Ramadan and celebrating Eid. And I learned so much from this. Network Effect might have been my favorite. Murderbot Diaries, why is it only 4 to 5 stars? I don't remember. Maybe I've read too much. And the May was very much about Ramadan and learning about Muslim culture and traditions, and maybe the Murderbot Diaries just drowned next to that. So The Weight of Our Skies is amazing and I can absolutely recommend it, but it has no chance against The Galaxy and the Ground Within. But They Called Us Enemies, ooh-wee. And Once Upon an Eid, both very strong contenders. Okay, let me think about it. So They Called Us Enemy was probably one of my favorite graphic novels and I felt it was very moving, but I have not thought about it as much after. The Galaxy and the Ground Within, I've been thinking about these books all throughout the year, so that definitely wins over that. The Weight of Our Sky, I have definitely talked about it a couple of times later as well, but Once Upon an Eid, I have talked about it probably as much as the Becky Chambers books. So it is definitely between those two. And I think Once Upon an Eid makes the race because it was more surprising and it just was fabulous to buddy read this with so many people. And I learned so much. I learn always when I read the Wayfarer series as well because it opens up my eyes. And I'm very passionate about that series. But Once Upon an Eid was a surprise, and I feel like Once Upon an Eid should be something that you should consider putting on a curriculum for people, for like kids in school to read, because it helps us acknowledge where other people are coming from, what they're celebrating, and I don't know, I would have loved learning about it. So Once Upon an Eid. And also when I think about Once Upon an Eid, I always have to think about my lovely friend Mo from Paperback Mo. Because he was one of the people we buddy read this with and who had a lot of insight. And I always have to think about some of the viewers of this channel that have given a lot of insight, who have read this with me. And I love thinking about these people. So Once Upon an Eid it is. All right, let's move on to June. June started us strong with Monster. Monster moved me, and I recently gifted this to a person who I think will appreciate it as much as I do. Well, I did enjoy York, and I did enjoy The Hero of Ages, but obviously not as much. I really did enjoy American Dirt. Isn't it funny, like, especially when I've listened to an audiobook, I remember usually where I read books in my mind, burned into my mind. Especially when I go on hikes, I have like some images of going on a hike and what I see in nature. I love that. So American Dirt I really enjoyed, but there are some problems with it and I struggled with the rating. I didn't know if I would want to give it a 5-star rating or a 1-star rating because of the problems with it, but in the end the problems were not big enough. So let me explain. There's a discussion around cultural appropriation and about the author not having these ancestors or these experiences in their family. But it is a fictional story in a way that I think even if this is what happened to your family, you would have to do the same research. And it feels like, from what I've read from people who can judge this, that the research was done quite well. So this is not something that I can fault her. The author then also created some cliche villain types that some people are saying are harmful because they are villainy stereotypes. But, and this is where I also am seeing some people who are from that culture saying that, on the other hand, it is a fictional story, and these are very clearly depicted as villain types. It's not where stereotypes are just feeding into, this is how Cubans are, this is how all Colombians are. It's just saying, hey, we are Colombians, and these are Colombians, and these are the bad guys, and the bad guys are this stereotype. And I think that this is okay to do in my world, and obviously in the world of a lot of other people. And this is why I landed with 5 stars, because I really did enjoy it. And I usually am very critical when it comes to when I learn about some of these things not being appropriate, or when it feels like some of these things not being appropriate. And that's one of the reasons why I give Gone with the Wind a 1 star, because the author simply had so many racist things in there and themes in there. I don't think it's a problem when a character is racist, as long as the author puts it in the right setting. We need people to be bad in books, to have antagonists. And that's what I think was done well here, but was done horribly in Gone with the Wind. And also horribly done with a book that I read later the year. So that's why I ended up giving it 5 stars, because I did really love it. And if you understand my rating system, I give 4 stars for an objectively good book, and then 5 stars if it moved me and I really just enjoyed it and got lost in it. So a 5 star just means it's a really good book, and I personally got touched. The last star is always about my emotions with a book and not objective. But Monster moved me much, much more than American Dirt. I loved American Dirt. We're in June, right? Have I actually looked at it? I also read The Burning God in June. Or is that July? Well, if I finished it in July, I probably didn't really read it in June, did I? But I didn't read it in June. The finishing date is July. So it's Monster. Monster surprised me as well. I didn't know what I was getting because I got it sent in a subscription box and I didn't know that it was written sort of like a film script. And that makes sense in the context, and it is a very, very quick read, and it was a very emotional journey. I can just recommend it. This is a book that you can read in an afternoon and then you think about it for another 2 days. Definitely recommend it. Okay, so then July, we have The Burning God and The Alloy of Law. Oh my gosh, I love Wax and Wayne so much. I also read Macbeth and completely fell in love with Macbeth. That's a really tough month. Gemini, The Space Between Worlds, enjoyed it, but didn't do it for me. A Betting Woman really was one of my favorites too. Betting Woman was a Once Upon a Book Club book. Was a surprise as well. It is, again, something in the 1850s, I think, in the US. But this is less about like Civil War, much more about the Gold Rush era. I am a sucker for that, and especially if it's not like a romance. A Betting Woman was inspired by a real person as well, and it's following a woman who is trying her luck in offering gambling and creating gambling, offering gambling in saloons, and I loved it so much. But honestly, A Betting Woman, as good as it was, has no chance against The Burning God and The Alloy of Law. Now, Alloy of Law is the first one in the trilogy and The Burning God is the last one in the trilogy. So I'm wondering, I think this one is gonna go to The Burning God. I love Wax and Wayne, but I'm not sure which of the three I like best, or if it's the combination of the trilogy. The Burning God just destroyed me. What I really love about the Poppy War trilogy as well is just the way we have morally gray, villainy characters. Do we have a hero? Do we have a villain? It's done beautifully. All right, let's move on to August. I read Binti in August, which I liked. I liked Recursion. I really enjoyed Wildcard, which was a big surprise. Interesting. The second Wax and Wayne I already put 4 out of 5 stars. We Are the Ends, Villainous. Ooh, White All Around was really good. It's a graphic novel. It's about a group of women creating a school for black kids, and it's amazing. Ooh, A Raisin in the Sun. And then Grey Sister and Monday's Not Coming. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Tex Kalan. I read that in August as well. How much more in August? Supernova. How am I going to decide this? Supernova versus Tex Kalan. Tex Kalan takes it. Tex Kalan versus Monday's Not Coming. Tex Kalan. Monday's Not Coming. So good. Grey Sister versus Tex Kalan. Ooh. Still A Raisin in the Sun against Tex Kalan. I think it's going to be Tex Kalan. White All Around is a really good recommendation. Graphic novel, so it's like an afternoon read as well. I was very positively surprised by Wildcard as well. I didn't expect it to be that good, but it's nothing against Memory Called Empire. A Memory Called Empire is an amazing sci-fi that also plays with social construct and what we consider that we know. It's just playing with our assumptions and how we understand society, and it's an amazing political intrigue that we are seeing through a very narrow and very focused area. And it's not like in a lot of other political intrigues where I feel like I can connect the dots much, much sooner because I have many more viewpoints. And here I'm just following a very narrow view, and it just feels a lot more and like I'm following that person who is trying to navigate a political intrigue, and you're just getting this one viewpoint. I can confidently say that the winner is not going to be here physically. because none of these books I still own. All right, Once Upon a Eat versus Monster. Both amazing books, both different in their way. I think I'm going to give this to... I want to give this to Once Upon an Eat because I have such an emotional connection to how we read it and how I experienced it, but actually I have to give it to Monster. It is using such different materials. It's using a different format in terms of the film script, and it just moved me so much. And then The Burning God versus A Memory Called Empire is really hard. I think I'm going to give it to The Burning God. It just moved me, and I am such a sucker for this type of characters and how we are battling. There's so much of an inner battle. And what I really love about the whole series as well is that they are not just about, oh, we're going to kill the emperor and then everything, the war's over and everything's fine, la-di-da-di-da. It is much more of a, hey, now we had a war. Now look at all the folk who are without a home, who are starving, and what are you going to do about it? And a lot about the aftermath and the side effects of war and battle and political struggles. And this also says why The Burning God wins against Monster. All right, we have our second finalist. All right, let's see who's our third finalist. September. I think this is going to be much easier because for the third half, for the third of the year, I read a lot less books. So in September, I read Dawn. It's going to be really hard to go up against Dawn because Dawn is definitely my favorite Octavia E. Butler book. Genius! Dawn. If you like science fiction for the social criticism and like human behavior and just opening our mind to that other people might have other motives, then Dawn probably could be a new favorite too. In that series we have an alien species, and I just feel like we should be more like them. We should learn from them, because what is so special about them is that they celebrate being different in a very physical way. They find being different attractive. They are drawn to people who are different. It's a little bit of a different level, and at first people who are not very open to other species and people thinking and seeing the world differently usually react very disturbed. But if you're open. So what else did we read that I really loved? Before We Were Blue, a YA contemporary that is about eating disorder. Oh, that was very, very moving and very good. Before We Were Blue against Dawn. That is actually harder than I thought that it would be. Before We Were Blue moved me because it has eating disorder. It has mental health issues that I can relate to and that I understand. Dawn is sheer genius. And you can't go against genius. It's definitely Dawn. October. October wasn't a good month. Oh, October was not a good month. I had no 5-star in October. I really enjoyed Where the Crawdads Sing, but I would say objectively a 3-star and the 4-star because I simply enjoyed it so much. Technically, was it that good? I think this one is gonna go to... I really did enjoy Deadly Education as well, but I think that this is gonna go to The Pacific Crest Trail Killer. The Pacific Crest Trail Killer is a German book, so you probably don't know it, and is a 600-page thriller, and I enjoyed that in this thriller we're not just following a detective type person, we're following several different areas, and one of these areas is the FBI. What I really liked is that the police and the FBI isn't just put as and picked, like drawn out as being stupid, and that's why they need a detective. There are a few plot holes, and especially towards the end, a few plot holes that I do have some issues with, but a lot of other things are very beautifully done. I loved how it wrapped up. My biggest issue with it is the sexuality and how it plays with sexuality, but I know that the author does it for a reason, and that he is trying to make a point of us being much more okay with gore and violence in books than sexuality, and he's trying to shock us a little and say, hey, why are we okay with a very bloody description of somebody being murdered, but we're not okay when talking about sex life? And my response pretty much to this is, I'm also not okay with somebody being very bloody murdered if it is not part of the plot. and if it's not important to bring the plot further. So I understand the decision by the and what the author is trying to do though. Pacific Crest Trail. Let's move on to November. I read Elantris in November, which I loved. Ooh, and I loved, and I read The Left Hand of Darkness, which I loved so much. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I read Oathbringer, which was not as good as the second one. I think we can cross off The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It was a 5-star. I really enjoyed it, but it does not compare to The Left Hand of Darkness or Elantris. These two are definitely the favorite of that month. Elantris is an amazing fantasy with an amazing world that also surprised me in some areas. I didn't know anything before going in, and I just expected a straightforward sword and sorcery fantasy, and it's a little bit different what I got. But The Left Hand of Darkness, genius. Yeah, it's definitely The Left Hand of Darkness. As much as I love Elantris, The Left Hand of Darkness has so much pure genius in it. All right, December, the last months. The Design Thinking Toolbox is one of my favorite nonfiction. Love it so much. The Upside of Fallen was fun. The Great Hunt obviously was fun, but not my... The Culture Map, oh my gosh. Yes. To the Culture Map, one of my other favorite non-fiction books. Like a River Glorious, we are in the 1850s, I think to be exact, 1849 US history again, with a sprinkle of fantasy. I adore this series so much. I think this is gonna go to the Culture Map. And I actually somewhere have that book. The Culture Map is a nonfiction that is about opening up your eyes and mind towards how other cultures are different and what it requires to work in between cultures. And I just think it's very well done, and we need more of it. We need more understanding of what the barriers are, because sometimes we're not speaking the same language, even if we're speaking the same language, because the way our native language works, even if we're both speaking English, my native language might work differently than yours, and what I'm suggesting is not something that you're understanding. And this goes in so many cultural levels, and it's so well done. All right, okay. Dawn Against the Pacific Crest Trail Killer is very clearly Dawn. I mean, that's not even a surprise after everything that I've said. The Left Hand of Darkness Against the Culture Map is really hard, because I feel like they're very connected, but the Culture Map is a nonfiction book that very clearly lines out what you're made to think in The Left Hand of Darkness from a fictional standpoint. They're both incredible, but I do think The Left Hand of Darkness is going to make the race. It brings you much more onto an emotional journey, and it brings you into this... I think if you're connecting knowledge with emotions, you learn. And the Culture Map doesn't achieve that, but The Left Hand of Darkness can achieve that. All right, Dawn Against the Left Hand of Darkness. Both a very similar theme about society and thinking about humanity and tolerance and openness and all of this with a speculative fiction. Obviously, this is potentially the theme of my year. Both genius work. Oh my gosh. Dawn Against the Left Hand of Darkness. I don't know how to decide this. So I think that The Left Hand of Darkness is a little bit more clear and a little bit more open about these themes. And with Dawn, you have to think a little bit further to get to the same level, which doesn't make it worse. It might make it even better. I'm a little bit biased because I have read, at this point, most of Octavia Butler's work, and I'm a big fan. And I have read nothing aside from The Left Hand of Darkness from Ursula K. Le Guin. I do want to, obviously now, but I'm a little bit biased towards Octavia Butler for this reason. And you've seen Wild Seed earlier being a contender. They're both equally amazing. I'm gonna give it to Dawn. I'm gonna give it to Dawn, and if I'm biased, that's fine. Emotionally, I'm more invested with the Dawn story, and it is one of my favorites. The Left Hand of Darkness is one of my favorites too, but All right, now we have our 3 winners. Let me just quickly grab Dawn because I think I have that physically here as well. Also, can I just say, if we would have a cover competition, the Octavia E. Butler series, then the new ones would absolutely win. I love the Pattern Master series, beautiful covers. I love that style so much. I love how we have different colors. They're bright but not too bright. I love the figures. Oh, such a good way of doing things. And then oh my god, aren't they beautiful? Aren't they beautiful? And I'm waiting for the 3rd one. It was supposed to be released 7 days ago, but it's not available. I pre-ordered it, not available, but these are stunning. And honestly, if we would have a cover competition, I love the Poppy War style as well, but Baby Dawn would win so much. So, okay, our 3 finalists are The Burning God, Dawn, and Yellow Wife. A perfect summary of my reading taste: historical fiction, ethno-futurism, and fantasy. I'm going to eliminate the Poppy Wars first. I am a sucker for the Poppy Wars, but as a whole. And while there were a lot of themes that I fell in love with in the 3rd one, it's the whole series that would probably win against these 2, but not the one book. Now we have Dawn versus the Yellow Wife. This is impossible. This is impossible. Both of these have emotionally touched me on a very, very deep level. This one has scarred me and moved me and made me cry. And this one has made me think. I think that this might be a little bit more genius than this one, but this one is based on a real person. This book is a work of fiction. All the characters are from my imagination, intuition, and alignment with spirit. It was inspired by the story of Mary Lumpkin and Lumpkin's Jail in Richmond, Virginia. So, as I said, it's inspired by, it's not a true story. And the dedication. You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you didn't know. William Wilberforce. And I've been talking about this a lot more than this, I think. Although that's not true, I've been standing in bookstores this year telling people to read this. I've been standing in a bookstore this year crying when I saw that they had Octavia Butler. When I started reading the Octavia Butler books, it was impossible for me to get them in Germany. The English section wouldn't have it. And then all of a sudden when I saw it for the first time, it was so hard to get them. And I am so passionate about these being a genius work of art. And when I saw that it's finally in like mainstream bookstores available, I was so moved. And I had a person come up to me and ask me what I would recommend, because I was standing in front of it and I had friends with me and I was telling them about all the books that I've read in the science fiction section, in the English section in that bookstore. And so I was raving about these 2 books a lot this year. They are deserved in the final. I'm surprised that I don't have Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson in the final, but Octavia is here. So let's give it to the Yellow Wife. I think the Yellow Wife is still a little bit underrated, and a lot of people know that Octavia Butler is a genius. And while I am going to continue reading this and in love, I think that the Yellow Wife moved me the most this year, even more than Dawn. I think Dawn felt genius and I talked about it a lot and I'm recommending it a lot, but the Yellow Wife moved me more. So apparently Yellow Wife is my favorite book of the year. All right, are you ready for my least favorite? I might be filming that in a little while. But I hope you enjoyed this concept. Let me know what you think. Would you prefer for me to be much more clear about my favorite books? Maybe talk about all the 5-star books that I've read. I just feel like so overwhelmed and I had a lot of fun doing this concept, but I also filmed for such a long time and this is gonna be such a long video. So if you're still here, thank you. I adore you. And yeah, let me know what you think. And I hope to see you again on my channel real soon. Until then, bye.
Just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? forever. I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever?